All right, hello everyone and welcome to Ad Q&A Live episode 17. I'm Nick Sinitra and today we are talking about retargeting. So if you are a digital marketing expert, then retargeting is not going to be an alien concept to you. So, maybe this is not going to be super informative for you, but if you are relatively new to the online advertising space and you've been hearing people talk about retargeting, remarketing, what is that? How do I do it? Why should I care? What's the deal? Stick around and we'll give you the scoop. So first off, let's talk about this distinction between retargeting and remarketing. This is one of those kind of subtle things that's it's sort of like if you hear people throw around SEM and SEO interchangeably, they're not the same thing. Some people think they are. This is even more nuanced, right? Because even Google, for instance, talks about retargeting as most people think about it as retargeting, right? So they use retargeting and remarketing interchangeably, but really let's just get to the point. So retargeting, broadly speaking, means showing ads generally to people who have taken some action on your site. Could be they just visited your site, could be they came to your site and filled out a lead, or let's say started a lead form but didn't complete it, or maybe they started a transaction, added something to their shopping cart but didn't actually complete the purchase, right? So through various means, which we'll explain in a little bit, you can then retarget those people. You targeted them in the first place to get them onto the site. Now you're retargeting them, and then you're going to show them another ad, right? To get them ultimately to take whatever that action is you want them to do, whether it's a purchase or submitting a lead, giving you their email, whatever it is. Now, remarketing, again, people are using this interchangeably with retargeting, but if you want to be actually, basically, remarketing tends to be more to do with email, right? And the really kind of subtle distinction here is that the emails that you send may include current customers, right? So retargeting, the way that most advertising professionals are going to use it, the connotation, the kind of the subtext is that you are retargeting people who have not already converted, right? Whereas with remarketing, that's not necessarily the case. You might be sending an email to someone who has purchased one of your products and you're trying to upsell them, or maybe you're just trying to kind of keep them in the loop. You want to tell them about maybe upsell opportunities, things like that, right? So remarketing may or may not be people who have purchased from you before, whereas retargeting, generally speaking, the commonly accepted sort of parlance here is going to be people who have not converted yet. Cool. All right. Thank you for sticking around for that little disclaimer, but hopefully that distinction makes sense. So let's specifically talk about retargeting. We're not really going to talk about email. I'm really stoked because I got confirmation, hopefully, fingers crossed, that next week my colleague Cassie is going to talk to us about email. That's going to be a sweet episode, so definitely tune in for that. Now, retargeting. What is it? Why should you care? How do you do it? And all that jazz. So, in short, why you should care, we already talked about what it was. Why you should care is because dollar for dollar, retargeting campaigns will typically be your most cost-effective, highest return on ad spend campaigns that you can possibly run. And how much value you get out of them is going to depend on a couple of factors because there are a couple different ways that you can build your retargeting campaigns. So as I alluded to earlier, the most straightforward retargeting campaign that you can build is simply retargeting to site visitors. Now, the trick here is that you don't want to waste any media spend on people who have already purchased, unless what you are retargeting them for is to try to upsell them on some other product or an add-on to something they already bought or what have you, right? Cool. So there's edge cases, but let's talk about kind of the main scenario here. Let's assume that you are selling shoes, right? You have some cool shoes. Let's say you're like an Allbirds competitor with some cool shoe that's hip and trendy, and you're just kind of breaking into the market. So what do? So you have tags on your site, right? Whether you're using Google Tag Manager to put all of your different page view pixels for Facebook and Google and whatever other platforms you're using, but you got a whole bunch of tags on your site that are tracking when people are getting there, and then whether or not they're doing particular events like adding to cart, purchasing, all that stuff, right? So let's say that you're going to just do the most basic retargeting campaign possible. What you're going to do is you're going to build a custom audience in whatever platform of your choice, Facebook, Google Ads, you have it, right, what have you, and you're going to say, for example, I want to target anyone who has just been to my site within the last 30 days. However, you're then going to exclude people who have already purchased, right, in this scenario. Let's just say in this case, there's not really add-ons for shoes, right? Sure, you could try to sell them another pair of shoes, but if we assume that it's a somewhat expensive pair of shoes, for the most part, if somebody's buying one pair of shoes, they're not going to buy another one in a very short amount of time, right? So cool. So you're going to retarget people who have been to your website in the last 30 days who have not purchased, right? And now, why this has a sort of a greater return on ad spend than a standard prospecting campaign is with prospecting, you're just sort of casting a broad net, right? You may be targeting people that have an interest in shoes or athletic activities or whatever it is, relevant interest to what you're selling, right? But they may not have been to your site before, right? Retargeting allows you to really zero in this case, people who have actually been to your site. So they already know who you are. They've already been to your site, right? The intent there is a little bit higher. In order to get to your site in the first place, they had to have had some intent, whether it was, oh, they heard about it from a friend, maybe they saw a different ad that you're running out there, one of your prospecting ads, they got there some way. So they know who you are and what you sell already, right? And now you're showing them an ad again. Remember, we had the previous one about customer journey. It takes multiple touch points. So now they're seeing it again, and it's reinforcing that idea, right? They went from basically, I've never heard of these guys before, to now, oh, that's right, yeah, I heard about these. My friend told me, or I saw their ad online, and now you're showing them an ad again. You're reinforcing that. It's another touch point. And maybe when you're doing a retargeting campaign, you're actually spicing it up. Because now you know two things about them. You know that they've been to your site, and because you're excluding purchasers, you also know that they haven't purchased from you before, right? And there can be one of several different reasons, right? You think about kind of the BANT, right? From a sales perspective, budget, authority, need, timing, all that stuff, right? Maybe they couldn't afford it, right? So if that's the case, when you do a retargeting campaign, perhaps what you could do is you could offer a discount. Hey, we know that they didn't buy the first time around. This time we're going to sweeten the deal by giving them maybe 5% off or 10% or whatever the case may be, right? Maybe it wasn't something that they were looking for. Maybe they thought it was something completely different. Maybe you only sell men's shoes. They didn't realize that, and they were female. They got there and they saw, oh, it's only men's shoes. Like, it's not really my style, whatever, and then they didn't buy it, right? So for them, maybe they're still not going to convert, and even the price is not really going to matter, right? And then timing, right? It can also be maybe the reason that they didn't purchase before was just because they were in a checkout line, right, at the grocery store, and they weren't ready to make that transaction right then and there. For them, maybe you don't actually necessarily need to offer them any discount. Maybe they had the intention to purchase, and the only reason that they didn't purchase was because of the timing. So this is why when you do retargeting, a lot of times what people like to do is what we think of as sort of a waterfall strategy, right? So if somebody has been to your site and they haven't purchased, what you wouldn't want to do is then retarget them the very next day after they've been to your site and then offer them 50% off, right? You basically didn't give them enough time. It depends on if it's a considered purchase. If we're talking about like a $2 pair of shoelaces, then maybe, yeah. I mean, if that's not something that's super easy for them to buy, and it's a low ticket item, they probably need some time to think about it. A pair of shoes might kind of fall into that category. Maybe they want to go see if they can get a better price on Amazon. Maybe they want to read some reviews and see what other people think about it. Maybe they just want to spend some more time seeing all the different styles you have before they then finally make that decision to purchase. So let's say in the first 7 days, right, you just are showing another ad with no discount, right? And then what you can do is you can say, okay, if somebody has been to the site more than 7 days ago and they haven't purchased, now I'm starting to think there's something more than just doing that research or the need or whatever, right? Maybe it's something more. It's at that point that you could start to layer in the discount. You could say if somebody had been to the site more than 7 days ago, right, let's say between 7 and 30 days, then you can say, okay, I'm going to give this person a discount and see if I can really push them over the top, right? Now, other things that you can do that's even a little bit more advanced, sort of follows on the same themes, but is basically retargeting on the basis of different actions. So we talked about a very simple scenario where you're retargeting site visitors, right, and then modifying your messaging, right, based on that, right? Now, let's say you actually retarget further down the funnel. So instead of just retargeting everyone who's been to your site who hasn't purchased, you go a step further. So a smaller audience, but you say, I want to actually retarget people who added something to the shopping cart, right, and didn't purchase, or even people who initiated a checkout but didn't purchase, right? These are all events that you can track in whatever advertising platform you're going after. Typically, any of the big platforms out there that you can think of, again, Facebook, Google, Pinterest, you name it, will all have the capability to allow you to define different sort of conversion events and then to use those to either include or exclude people from a pool that you want to retarget. So in this scenario, I could have another retargeting audience that is, let's say, people who added to cart but didn't check out, or people who started to check out but didn't purchase, right? And how far down the funnel you go usually can give you some indication of what the problem might be. So for instance, if I added to my cart but I didn't purchase or didn't start the checkout, maybe it's probably more likely the price was the issue, right? At that point, like if I'm in line at the checkout, in the checkout line at the store, if I'm not ready to purchase right now, I may not actually add it to my cart, right? I might just go like, oh, okay, I'll remember to check out whatever, Nick's sneakers, right, later, and then purchase, right? You're probably less likely at that point to add something to your cart and then come view it again later on your mobile device. You're probably gonna go home, get on your desktop or your laptop or whatever it is and purchase later, right? On the other hand, you got to kind of get into the buyer psychology here. If you add something to your cart but then you don't purchase it, usually it's going to be because of some other reason, like maybe the payment option that you wanted to use wasn't available, or it's more expensive than you thought, or maybe the promo code that you were going to use didn't work or something like that, right? So that's where you start to kind of get in that state of mind of, okay, what kind of people would get to this point in the flow and then stop, and what can I do to push them over the line, right? So cool. I mean, that is basically, a high level view of how to think about retargeting and, basically the sort of different tactics there. We talked again about the waterfall strategy that if you really want to maximize that area under the curve and you don't want to sort of give up too much from a margin perspective earlier than you have to, that you can basically do kind of a staggered discount where you say, okay, if I know somebody's been to my site within the last 7 days and they haven't even added something to their cart, let alone purchased, I'm gonna do some different messaging, right? Maybe a different angle this time around to, again, get another touch point, get my name back out there, get top of mind, get them back on the site, and maybe try to complete that purchase. And then, later on, if somebody added a cart and they didn't purchase, right, then my next move is going to be like, okay, why is that happening? Is it because maybe I only offer PayPal, right? At that point, maybe part of what you do in addition to setting up this retargeting campaign to try to get people down the funnel is you also see if there's other options they may be available to you. Maybe there's plugins through Shopify that will, Stripe and all that stuff that will allow you to process credit card transactions, right? And then you can kind of take a look and see how conversion rates differ before and after. So cool. This is about 12 minutes in. This is going to be a pretty short one. I think, conceptually, this is not super hard to grasp. I think we can get into some of the more interesting advanced retargeting topics in a later episode, but just to plant a little seed and get you thinking, there's some really cool product-centric stuff that you can do with retargeting, which is basically for Google they have what's called, or sorry, for Facebook they have what's called an DPA or dynamic product ad, and then Google also, the name is escaping me right now, but they basically have their own version of this. What's super cool about this, and you probably have seen these ads online, where you look at not just any product, but specific products on an advertiser's website. And then later, when you're out on the web, you see that same exact product, right? Now, that is a subvariant of retargeting, right? And that is a real moneymaker in terms of conversion rates and ROAS, even more than just a general retargeting campaign. Those dynamic product ads that are showing people the exact thing that they looked at, it's good stuff, right? From a return on ad spend perspective. However, from a technical standpoint, there's more stuff that needs to happen. Depending on your back end, if you're on Shopify and so forth, some of it they tend to make your life a little bit easier. But as an example, you basically need, for Facebook, for example, you need a way to tell Facebook what product people were looking at so that Facebook can show them the right product. So again, just to plant a seed, we'll get deeper on this later, but the way this works is you have a product catalog in Facebook, right? There's different tools and apps and stuff that you can use to build the catalog. And if you're using like Magento or Shopify, it can usually be straightforward to integrate it into Facebook. But the key thing is that the, let's say, view content or page view pixel has a unique ID that's tied to that item in the catalog, right? So if I'm looking at a pair of red sneakers that's got a certain ID in the Facebook catalog or Google Merchant Center or wherever the case may be, and the pixel that's on that page also needs to have that ID, right? To basically get those things to talk, right? So that the ad communicates to the catalog and to Facebook and says, hey, this person, Nick Sinitra, saw this particular red shoe, just so you know, right? And that connection is made. And then when somebody sets up a DPA campaign, right, Facebook knows, hey, that item in the catalog is what should show in the ad unit that's targeting this guy over here, right? We know that he looked at it, we're gonna show him the same thing. So that's super powerful. And again, Facebook and Google both have their own versions of this, and they're really, really strong performers. So if you're an e-com advertiser, highly, highly recommend that you get that set up. It's super, 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 super good performance. Okay, cool. Now we'll call it for real. I think that's all I wanted to cover today. So as usual, thank you for watching. Hope you found this interesting. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Yes, sorry I had to say it. And tune in next time. And thanks again. Bye.